Hi there and welcome back to Japan, where we're going to be doing a little bit of a talky one again. And this is following up the video that I did in regards to Band-Maid moving to Pony Canyon. Now this was an interesting video. Usually I don't follow up on videos in this manner, but we got more comments than I think we've ever got on any video before, even on our previous channel. There's about 136 comments at the last time of checking. So I wanted to give it a bit of time. Didn't want to look like I was milking it by just doing another video covering something that was successful the first time around. But there were some really interesting comments that I tried to reply to, and I thought it was kind of good to maybe reply to these in a video so that everyone could be involved in those parts of the conversation, because there were some really interesting things that came up. Now, obviously, my initial reaction in that first video was very much just an initial reaction, my thoughts, as it came up. And one of the things that's worth pointing out here, I will restate this, I kind of danced around this point a little bit the first time, but I will restate this, is that I have worked with people inside of Pony Canyon. I've worked around the music industry my entire adult life in Japan as well. Being here in Japan has given me a lot of chance to experience a lot of things inside the music industry as well, and this isn't exactly like even the first time I've been here. I have a lot of ability to judge what I see here based on experience and precedent, but I should just point out first of all, I don't have an inside scoop on this. I don't know from anything from directly inside what's going on right now with Pony Canyon and Band-Maid, but I can give you a good idea of what's worth considering and things that maybe other people don't think about what actually goes into a process like this. So the first thing I wanted to cover, and this was a really big one that came up, is a lot of people said this, and they said this in good faith, and I see where they're coming from, but it's worth considering the facets of this argument. Is a lot of people were saying a mixture of either that they trust Band-Maid to have their sound, to be the band who they are, and to, if you like, be the masters of their own destinies, and then a smaller number, but still a very important number, saying that they were concerned very much about anyone working against that, anyone crushing their ability to really be their own sound. Now, first thing I wanted to point out here is that I think this is this skates a partial truth. I know that we had, again, 50-50. Some people really liked the sound of Conqueror. Some people really disliked the sound of it. I personally was a great believer that the production was fantastic. I loved the production. I thought that they had some great effects and things on there, but the mastering was awful. It was all crushed and compressed to the point where a lot of the life was gone, and so I could hear that I had the feeling that there was a really lively, interesting, dynamic album in there that had been kind of crushed in the final studio process into this being this compressed mess, and I still very much would love to hear an uncompressed version of that album. I don't think we'll ever get it, but I think we should campaign for it because it would be amazing. However, yeah, that being said, I could see why some people had concerns about that sort of part of the direction. However, like I say, overall, I liked the sound of Conqueror, and to me it showed that the band are trying to develop, and this is something that also came across in the band Michael EP, is there's this feeling that they're developing their sound, they're trying to develop. Now, this can lead to what could be a bit of an interesting problem with fans come the new album. I would be surprised if they released an album that was just rock. A lot of people like World Domination for that reason. They want it because it's the powerful rock album. One thing I had against the album World Domination, which I had some of my favourite songs by them, is the fact that as an album it doesn't have enough variation to really get you from start to end. It just barrels along very consistently, but I want to hear more from them. So, like I say, I get the whole trend from taking over their own writing to slowly things getting more and more sort of varied in the way that they present themselves musically. I do think the band are pushing for more variation, and I don't know whether that is an instigator of why they've gone to Pony Canyon, who are not traditionally the home for this type of music, or whether it's just a good coincidence. But I can't help but feel that Band-Maid themselves are looking for a home where they can experiment a little bit more. And I get the feeling that whatever we think about this new album, I'm certainly looking forward to it a hell of a lot. Whatever we think of this new album, I can't help but worry that if there's experimentation that doesn't land maybe with fans, that people might end up blaming that on Pony Canyon. Now, ironically, I think that Pony Canyon are more likely to want Band-Maid to not go too far outside of what they do, because obviously from Pony Canyon's side, they've bought something which is a little bit different from their usual roster in Band-Maid. And I'm sure they've picked up Bandmaid because of the loyal following and because it might help them branch into maybe a new area of the music scene, something that's been growing a lot over recent years, but they haven't themselves tapped into so much. So they might actually be more inclined to want Bandmaid to just be consistent with what makes them popular. And Bandmaid might actually be the ones who are more likely to push for doing things like maybe poppy songs. Like I say, Pony Canyon are going to be most likely very happy if they can get one strong poppy song out there, just so that the radio plays launched a lot. We said this a lot about Silent Siren. Silent Siren's most recent album has not been seemingly as successful as the previous ones, and I don't think that's because of a lack of quality in the album. I do think that's because of the fact that the previous albums all before had really like radio heavily played songs, songs that did heavy circulation, whereas the most recent album, very high quality, but has not managed to have any one song that's really grabbed that kind of rotation. So a big single counts. And I think that in that aspect, yes, Pony Canyon might try and steer something like that out of Bandmaid. But overall, I don't think that they're going to want Bandmaid to still sound like Bandmaid, because that's what they purchased and that's what they, I think, are going to want, is something reliable to expand their roster. So, as I say, I do have a slight concern that if they come up with something a bit different that doesn't land so well with everyone, people might immediately assume it's Pony Canyon, where actually it could actually be Bandmaid. Let's be honest, Bandmaid could make missteps. Even the greatest artists of all time, the most universally accepted great artists of all time, have made missteps when trying to expand upon what they do, because that's what experimentation is. That's what being creative and original is. Now, the sidebar to this is obviously the fact that a lot of people, this is a very big sidebar, it's virtually a whole different topic, but very much grows from that, is a lot of people saying, well, record company won't really affect them. If they leave them alone, Bandmaid will be fine, because Bandmaid should just be alone to be Bandmaid. Totally agree in essence, but here's the thing. When you are growing as an artist, even if you don't believe that they're going to try and expand in a genre sense, even if you think they're just going to be themselves, they're not going to go into a studio just to do exactly what they've done before. They are in some way going to want to develop, even if it's just developing new ways of doing the same sound. Whatever it is, they're going to want to develop to do something new on the new album, or they wouldn't bother even recording a new album. So, when you develop by being influenced. Not copying, not necessarily, but, by being influenced. I think this was why the whole Tony Visconti thing happened. I think they wanted to be around people who produced an environment that helped them grow. You can't grow in a vacuum. You need to have a certain sound chamber. You need to have certain reactions to what you do from experienced studio people. This is why, apart from just the sound, this is why artists like to work with older producers. You look at a lot of the people in the studio with Power, actually in the recording studio, often the artists are the youngest people there. This is often the case. The producers, the people who have any creative input are usually older. Even the sound technicians who set up the guitar for the guitarists, assuming they've got one, which they almost definitely have, usually older. Why do you have these older people around? Because they have the experience. They're not making the creative decisions per se, the producer is, but even with a good producer, it's not solely them. They're bouncing it off of the artist. It is all a sound chamber, and no artist grows completely in a vacuum. You grow through that inspiration. Now, the reason why this is a big thing is the record company you're with, the producers you're with, the people you're with, you're creating your sound chamber. Not so that you can be directly influenced by them. Like we said in the previous video, the worst case of production, especially executive producers who are not really creatives for the best part, is when they're in there telling you what they think you should do. But if we take that one side and we look, like I said, at this sort of sound chamber where you're bouncing your ideas or you're just monitoring the reactions you get to what you do, the people around you are actually having an effect on that. So you want to be around the right people. You want to be around people with experience, with relevant opinions. Or sometimes just you want to be around people who are not yes men. And this is a big thing. I'm not saying deliberate yes men, but if you are in a rock band and you go to a traditionally rock label, you're more likely to get yes all the time. If you're a rock band and you go to a label who you know, I mean, I know they're going to bring in contractors to be in the studio. It's not just going to be like Bob from accounting. But, you know, I mean, the point is that if you are around a group of people who maybe are not picked in that way, who are maybe picked for experience, but of more differing genres, you're going to get reactions that are maybe going to make you think. And of course, if they're good studio people, they're going to know that they're not maybe familiar with your genre as much. So if you're dealing, let's say you're dealing with an extremely experienced pop producer, but you're doing a rock album, they'll know it's new for them as well. I think you get where I'm going with this, but just to make the point, so you'll play something and they'll say, well, look, that's great, that's good. In my opinion, I'd suggest maybe, have you thought about doing this? And you might say, no, that's just not the way we do it. Fine. But you've heard that different opinion, and now maybe in a couple of songs' time, there'll be something else you'll do where that will come back to you. This is the point. You grow by being around that kind of thing. So it doesn't require that anyone tells them what to do or in any way has any sort of input. Just by being in a different environment, it could help the way they grow at what they do. So I do think that there is a broader point here that you're absolutely right. You guys are absolutely right that I think as a band, they are very driven. I think they have a direction. I think that they will very much follow what they want to do. And I think that if they were being told to do something they didn't want to do, I do believe they're the kind of band who would walk away from that situation. I don't think they would hang on. I think they would be willing to experiment and maybe look back at something and say, you know what, that didn't work. But I don't think they would genuinely go against themselves. But they are going to grow, and, you know, as always, not every fan is going to like the direction they go in, whatever direction that may be. It might not even be different, it might just be a growth in the way they do, like, say, writing the same rock music they've been doing before. The point is, though, is that they are going to grow, and it's going to be affected partly by what's around them. Now, this comes on to another point which was brought up, and I thought this was a really interesting one, actually. I've had some differing opinions on this one, and this is very subjective, which is the whole idea of the international element. Pony Canyon, obviously, very much Japan-focused, and I said in the last video, you know, I think it's good for them to be, considering they've got good international representation. I mentioned JPU, you know, they got deals outside of Japan for independent or, you know, sort of connected distribution. It's nice that in Japan, where they're doing their core work, they're connected to a very Japan-focused, Japan-centric company. I thought that was good because it maintains their core identity. I was interested to see that some people were saying, well, actually, they disliked when artists did this, and they wanted them to have more of an international sound, or at least an international focus, so that they could broaden themselves. This comes into a very difficult area because I think this could boil down to semantics, but there's a few things to cover. First of all, if we're talking strictly musically, yeah, I guess you want them to be as likable to everyone as possible. However, you know, if we were taking that to its extreme, just for the sake of a hyperbolic example, you know, the most likable thing to everyone is usually the common denominator, boring crap pop that gets, you know, the airplay that most of us as music fans would find to be a little bit too weak and watery to even be interesting at all. I know that I'm taking that to, like I said, the extreme, but my point is that I do think that, if anything about their sound was overtly westernized, I mean, they are already basically doing a Western band formula of two guitars, bass, drums, singers. You know, one's a lead, one's a rhythm guitar. You know, I mean, they are basically doing a Western sound to begin with. But I think the fact that they have that ability to sound uniquely Japanese as well, I think that's a core thing. So, you know, being with a record company who's not going to pressure them to sound like a Western band, we've got Western bands. They're in the West, you know, and obviously there's more of them because that's a bigger market than Japan, which is just, you know, one country. So I do think that that's what I mean by them protecting their sounds. I don't want them to sound like they're too similar to other two Western bands for that reason. However, also it was balanced the idea of marketing. Now, this is very true. That we don't want them to go down the sometimes very stuck in the mud Japanese style of marketing. At the moment, they've got a very international style of marketing for the best part. You know, look at bands like Ningunis. Ningunis punch way above their weight because they are engaged in that sort of more Western style of using social media, communicating with their fans. Look how much of a Western fan base they've grown, considering that, I mean, up until all of this, I mean, this has kind of been an echo, because up until this, they had their success in Japan, but it had been kind of low for a while. And like I said, I've talked to one of my best friends, who's a very big fan of theirs, Japanese. And, Ninginess had been sort of fairly level, but it was suddenly getting that huge success outside of Japan through YouTube, through social media, and then really leaning into it and allowing themselves to do that and allowing their music to be reacted to by reactors free of charge, not copyright blocking people, letting their whole videos out there full length, no short version stuff like that. It was by doing that it came back, and that popularity bounced back and had an effect on them becoming more popular in Japan as well. So obviously I 100% agree that this sort of more modern, internet focused, internet happy Western style of marketing is the right thing to do. It is the right way to go. However, again, I think we're looking at, like I said about, Pony Canyon are not going to want to mess with something that I think they've purchased this stake in Band-Maid because they like what they see and it's a surefire thing. They just want to put some more money into that. That's my suspicion. And that's another core thing. They're not going to be so stupid as to look at this and not realize the whole reason this thing is working is because of the fact that, I know that they have been caught up with some things to do with, copyright blocking, and apparently they've done some copyright striking. I don't know about this. I think mainly for the live stuff, because obviously live stuff, that's different. If you post live footage, you're basically competing with DVD sales, which isn't good. However, for me, it really, it's obvious that the band has benefited a lot from their openness on social media as well. So I just would be very surprised, even though Pony Canyon have been around for a while, I think that they're smart enough that they're not going to suffocate what is obviously working for them. And considering the band already has a significant overseas market and they know how the overseas market works, I think what's more likely is that they might just take a bit more of a harsh stance only within Japan. And we've seen this with some artists before, where basically if you're in Japan, you might start getting copyright strikes, but for everyone else in the rest of the world, you won't get copyright strikes. That is totally possible. Just suddenly coming to my head now. Terrifying thought. I'll have to get James to post all the videos in future. However, I just really, I really don't see them wanting to mess with that side of things. We've seen, with bands like Scandal before. I really think Scandal, if they hadn't been connected to sort of, they're not connected to Sony, but obviously Victor being much more old school, I think it's those connections that have been suffocating them, because I think they could have been much more popular if they'd been much more open and much more focused on spreading their music to a market freely and earning the just sort of the respect of fans through that, through open, generous marketing, rather than, sort of short videos, copyright strikes, high prices and stuff like this. I think, Scandal deserve a lot better. I've said it a few times, and I think, I'm sure Pony Canyon would be wise enough to see that difference and realise that's a big thing. I'm just going back to one point, because it did come up as well. A few people mentioned about the Tony Visconti thing. I did want to say again that I think that Tony Visconti did a fantastic job on that song. And I think it was just crippled by quite possibly the worst mastering job I've ever heard. If you don't know what compression is and how that works in mastering, we've got a video about that on this channel. So go onto our channel page, just type into the search thing compression, and you'll see a video about that. So you'll understand how that works and how that kills a song. But for me, it was a big, big factor. Well, it was the only factor in destroying that song. I think Tony Visconti actually did a great job with the sound he went for. He went for a very interesting sound. It was a bit Western, but it was nice as a contrast to the rest of the album, and it was done with a lot of quality. So I would like to hear, first of all, that song again, uncompressed. I know we never will, but I'd love to hear that song uncompressed. I've heard the live version, but obviously that doesn't have his production on it per se. So I'd love to hear him reappear on the new album. Don't know if that will necessarily happen, but it would be great if it did. And we could hear the contrast. Again, hoping this album is not overly compressed. I really hope that, like I say, and I believe this, I believe that Pony Canyon will know why Band-Maid works, and that will be part of a decision to pick them up. And therefore, I think they will be listening to the fans, listening to what the fans want. But I would just say, if this album comes out sounding very different from how you expect, I think I'd be more inclined to believe that was Band-Maid's choice rather than Pony Canyon's choice. That's just what I think, at least, anyway. Anyway, there you go. There's a little waffle to follow up some of, I think, one of the primary points that I heard the most about in the comments. But thank you so much. It was really great to see all the comments. Really interesting to see what you guys thought. I hope this wasn't too rambly. I tried to address everything as best as I could, but there was just so many wonderful points in there and so many thoughts that came up as a result. Feel free to comment on this video as well. We can keep the discussion going. I don't want to look like I'm milking it just for views. That's not what we do here. I want each video to actually have a reason for it to be worthwhile watching. But if there is enough interesting comments on here with their own individual thoughts, then maybe I'll give it a little bit of time and I might put out another one to follow up that as well. But I think probably by that point, we'll have already seen what comes out and I'll actually be on the phase of reviewing maybe the new products from them anyway. Their new products. Sounded so commercial, didn't I? Anyway. Until then, I just want to say a big thank you for you commenting, liking, subscribing, all those things. Following the social medias if you want to talk to more other Japanese music fans, as in fans of Japanese music. They're not all necessarily Japanese. A lot of them speak English. Most of them, actually. Because these videos are in English. Follow the social medias and the links in the description below if you'd like to. Do remember that you also can join our Patreon if you'd like, because the patrons keep me alive. Big thanks to you guys, and just thank you for making it through to the end of this video. Whether you agree with me or not, this channel's all about conversation and about music, so get in there, tell me your subjective opinions, but justify them. I love the fact that the last video there was so many people explaining what they thought and why. Looking forward to seeing that and hopefully continuing this conversation in one way or another, whether it be in the comments or in another video. But until I see you hopefully soon for the next one of these in Japan, for now, ciao ciao.